Welcome back to the channel. I'm Joe Potter and this is the Vintage Underground. So this is part 2 of our little series on the facilities that we have and what it takes to do what we do. And like I said in the last episode, it takes a lot of space. This space is definitely our largest. This is the mechanical room that we're in right now. There's a lot of technicians in here, a lot of cars, and a lot of parts. And like I say, it takes a lot of room to do this. At the far back of this building is one major chunk of our parts storage. And you can imagine that you start taking apart a lot of cars and you get a lot of parts, and you have to very carefully keep track of those. So cars are coming apart in here and they're going together. And we keep those separated because the one's clean, one's dirty, but they're all happening in the same room here. None of the dirty parts of a process happen in here. As far as degreasing or cleaning or sandblasting and that kind of stuff doesn't happen in this space. So yes, there are cars that are coming apart that are unrestored, but the room is actually kept pretty clean. So let's step over here and show you another area. Okay, we're over to another section of the building. This is Fabian's station, but it's a really good example of kind of how this works, at least in our shop. And he is over here. He's taking apart a Alfa Berlina TI. It's a full restoration. The tub is going to go down to 0 and go over and get acid dipped. But in the meantime, he's got all this taken apart. Engine and transmission and rear end and all the parts and components that make up a car, including the bucket of wiring harness over here. And that's a good example of kind of detail work. Every wire in that is labeled. We're not going to use that wiring harness. It'll be a completely new one, but he has to go through and label every single wire in there as to what it is so that we can correlate that color-wise and with the new one. So, along with all this going on, he is also doing final assembly on a Mercedes 190 that was a full restoration and full build. So this is a real typical scenario where we have multiple things going on and one coming down and one coming back up. Now if you look over here at the next station, this is Bill's station. This is a little Berkeley. This has been a really fun one. These cars aren't worth a whole lot, but they're very small, very cute, and a lot of fun. And we've had the opportunity of being able to do a full restoration on it, which has been killer. So, Bill's doing final assembly on that, but at the same time, we're doing some repair work on a 330 Ferrari, some repair work on a smallmouth Triumph TR3. And so this again is real typical of this scenario. We have multiple things going down and coming back up at the same time. We have to be able to jump back and forth. And that takes a whole lot of space and a whole lot of organization to pull that off, that all the parts are coordinated so that when the technician needs them, they can go to them and they know right where they're at. So, all right, let's head over here. All right, what's behind me here is our fabrication area. We have to make a lot of stuff. We're not doing, Camaros and stuff where you can call up year one and get a bunch of parts. We end up having to make a lot of stuff. And we end up having to repair a lot of stuff, transmission cases and engine blocks and parts, pieces, you name it, stuff that doesn't exist anywhere out there or is such limited availability that we have to repair it. So we do a lot of machining, we do 3D printing, we do CNC work, so we do a lot of stuff to create things, and that's what this area is, along with our metal shaping area, which we also use to do a lot of fabrication and panel creation. So really typical for us to have to make a lot of stuff, and that all happens in this facility. You'll kind of notice that this building it looks kind of old, and it is. It was built in the 40s, and it's got some really cool vibe to it. There's been a lot of interesting heavy industry in here through its life, and it's kind of fun to be in a building this old to do all this in. It's kind of a neat environment. So I think that's kind of most of it. You can kind of get a feel for the shop, and how it spans. It goes in pretty deep in towards the back, and ultimately where our most of our part storage is here in the back. So you can kind of see it's a pretty good sized space. I think this building, along with the body shop which is attached to it, I think it's 22,000 square feet for just this operation here. And you kind of see it flows back into it. And there's some very cool old wood, big wood beams and stuff that are part of this building that really makes it pretty cool. All right, so let's move into the body shop. And this is the paint and body shop. It is attached to the mechanical building with a pass-through doorway, not open to it. Body shops are dust, and it's something that really can contaminate a shop. So we keep it physically separated. And we also, you can kind of see here in this building, we keep the spaces separated by these tall curtains. All that's done for dust control, to keep it from migrating everywhere. It's a real contaminant. We especially don't want it on the mechanical side. But you can kind of see the large curtains are all in place here, and this is done, and they're very tall, and it's just all that's done is just keep the dust compartmentalized, just so we can clean it up easier. If those weren't there, it would go everywhere in this building, and the cleanup area would be that much larger. So all this is done to keep it compartmentalized. It's a little bit of a pain moving cars in and through, and for the guys to get through, we kind of create a little bit of a labyrinth of curtains. But it does its job and keeps this area really tidy. So once body's done and we have paint and it's cut and the car is ready, it then transfers over to the mechanical side to be assembled. So it's nice having the two departments right next to each other, but it's also really nice having them physically separated so we don't cross-contaminate. So I'll show you a little bit what's going on back in here. Okay, so this is just the behind the curtain, if you will. And you can see a lot of these projects, almost all of them in here, are covered with plastic, and the reason we do that is to just minimize contamination. If we're moving from project to project and having to stop for whatever reason, we'll cover it just because those materials are exposed and we don't want anything just falling on them, dust or whatever. So it's all done to minimize any potentials for contamination. You can kind of see here, there's a lot of body work going on right here, but right down here, that is a AC Asica, and it is just finishing up metalwork. So it's not into body yet. So there's a lot of metal finishing going on, and that's kind of the extent of what will happen here. If there's any heavier stuff where we're welding and creating panels and stuff, that'll happen over in the fab area. But as far as finish work, just before we do body work, we'll do that in this space as well. So you'll see instances like this where a car is just in raw metal, and that's getting ready for body. Okay, this is our paint booth. Depending on the car, we can have a week spent painting the car, where different chunks in here are hung and painted, and like this, the core body structure, the shrouds are being painted, and then all that has to be removed and different stuff come in. It takes a lot of time. So completely different scenario is what a lot of people are used to in collision shops. It moves very slowly here, and as we methodically move through the pieces. And then ultimately, if you get into a situation where you're doing a metallic or something like that, where you've got to do an overspray to get everything uniform, then you have to assemble the car and bring it back in and go over the whole thing. So it can be a really laborious process to get this done. So this is pretty simple, but it works really well for us. And we just have the one booth, but we just don't paint that often. It's just the end of a pretty long process. Okay, just a couple more corners to go. One of those is the wood room. And when you get into coach-built cars, a lot of pre-war coach-built cars and a few post-war, the body's actually made out of wood and the metal caps over that. So we have to have the ability to deal with wood in that scenario, but also more simply in like T-Series and MGAs and Triumphs and whatnot. They had wood floors, just like plywood wood floors. So we have to have the ability to work wood as part of this process as well. This is another corner, and this is metal shaping. So the big Yoder and the hammers and the English wheel for shaping panels as mostly as part of an exterior body panel, but we also use this a lot making unique shapes, whatever battery boxes or anything else that happens to be damaged or missing on a car. So this is a pretty critical part of being able to create things that don't exist. All right, I think that's it for part 2 and this building. On the next one, we'll go over to our storage building, which is a really critical function because we have to be able to move cars off the floor and on the floor depending on what we're working on, what parts we're waiting for, or waiting for something to come back from acid dip or something like that. So we have to be able to be pretty fluid. So that's an interesting building as well, and that'll be on the next one. But I think I about covered this one, so I do appreciate you all, and please do like and subscribe, and we'll see you on part 3.